Our world is based on 4 elements. In its pure form, the elements are destructive, they represent the primary chaos. In order for the existence of the middle world to be possible, the power of the primordial elements passed through several filters, which in magic are called 3 circles. In the inner circle is the world of people, and in this world everything is simple, clear and understandable. The human world is safe from the chaos of the elements, and in it people interact with the elements on a material level as with the manifestation of the forces of nature: fire, water, earth, air. Other elements in the human world are known as simple and understandable moral truths: love, element fire; hatred, element earth; death, element water; life, element air. In the second circle there is more chaos. The elements can show their power here. Magicians and sorcerers take their power from this circle. For people, the space of the second circle is worlds beyond the line. According to people, devils live there. Magicians, sorcerers and priests conclude contracts with the forces of the second circle. The space of the third circle is incomprehensible to people and inaccessible to sorcerers. It can only be perceived by high-level magicians, since here the elements are in their pure form. About these forces, the magician Don Juan told Carlos Castaneda that this is the space of the unknowable and there is something impersonal there. The high-level magician Lovecraft came into contact with this space in his dreams and visions and experienced unimaginable horror from the forces located there. If a religious person dreams of meeting God and is sure that God is kind and loves a person, then a magician who is able to enter the space of the third circle knows that God is not kind and he does not radiate love, but he is impersonal and unknowable, he is chaos. Let's look at the action of the 3 circles on the example of the element earth. The earth element. In occult practices, it is customary to distinguish 3 levels of immersion in the earth. These levels are very well described in Greek myths in the images of the mother goddesses of the earth. Greek myths are a description of the development and transformation of elemental forces, a description of how reality was created on this transformation, and not at all fairy tales about how Zeus the Thunderer covered everything moving with his lust. For example, these forces are represented by 3 generations of goddesses: Gaia, Rhea and Demeter. Gaia is the deepest layer of the primary force, the birthplace of the Titans, the primordial potencies of the elemental elements, the womb of the mother. Rhea is the middle layer, the place of preservation and accumulation, the place of formation of the memory principle, continuous memory, generic memory, as well as the birth of systems and principles. Demeter is the upper layer, biology and fertility, all living things and natural cycles of time. The penetration of consciousness into each of the layers depends only on the power of the awakened fire. If the fire is fierce, primary, creative, it is like the fire of the primordial god Uranus and is able to penetrate the deepest layer of the earth, the layer of Gaia. If the fire is already structured, is subject to the time factor, has a formed system of excitation-extinction, then its penetration is possible on the Rhea layer, and such a fire is similar to the fire of the god Kronos. These 2 types of fire are not physically manifested, and the third fire, the fire of Zeus, the visible fire, is able to interact with biology, and its level of penetration is the layer of Demeter, where all living and material things originate. Usually a person can communicate with the Demeter layer freely. From this source he takes strength for health and fertility. The Rhea layer is not accessible to every person, but only to those who work with their consciousness and are able to raise their assemblage point, AP, to the level of the causal body. By controlling the flows of time at this level, consciousness becomes able to control its own fire, penetrating deeper and further into the layers of the goddess Rhea's memory. AP is the assembly point, the fixation point of attention. A place in the structure of consciousness, a fulcrum, from where an individual mounts his own reality, turns the world around. Here we can recall the described rituals of the ancients in the temples of Rhea Cybele, when only a warrior strong in passion could overcome the protection and resistance of the priestess of the goddess Rhea and unite with her. Those who were unable to comply with their own desires were killed by the servants of the temple or were castrated. In this ritual, the rules for entering the Rhea layer, into the temple of the goddess, are described. Since passion is fire, Whoever does not have enough fire passion is not worthy of the knowledge of the ancient gods, he is unworthy of fertility, has no right to leave offspring like himself. His act and conceit are so insulting to the goddess that this insult could only be washed away with the blood of an impudent man. The Gaia layer is a closed space for a person. Nothing biological lives on this level. In myths, this is Tartarus, the place of imprisonment of the primary forces. There is no time, there is no habitual understanding of the mind, and no contracts work there. Myths tell that when the Titans broke the surface, the battle of the gods began, in which the young gods won. In Greek mythology, Kronos was the leader and youngest of the first generation of Titans, the divine descendants of the primordial Gaia, Mother Earth, and Uranus, Father Sky. He overthrew his father and ruled during the mythological Golden Age, until he was overthrown by his own son Zeus and imprisoned in Tartarus. In Scandinavian mythology, the primary chaos, the world abyss, is Ginnungagap. In the northern part of Ginnungagap lay the intense cold of Niflheim, and in the southern part lay the equally intense heat of Muspelheim. The cosmogonic process began when the effulgence of the two met in the middle of Ginnungagap. The first being was Yamir, Bramir or Orgelmir, the frost giant from which the world was created. He was killed by the descendants of the storm god Odin, Wili and Ve. Having killed, they created a world out of him. The legends of Ymir are related to the Greek Orphic legends about the origin of the world from the body of Dionysus and the Hindu myths about the origin of the world from the body of Purusha, Rig Veda. Some researchers believe that the name Ymir is related to the Hindu Yama, the first deceased being who rules the underworld and judges the souls of the dead. In Sumero-Akkadian mythology, this is the myth of Tiamat, the female personification of the primeval ocean, the chaos of salty waters, from which everything, including the gods, in Sumero-Babylonian mythology was born. According to the Sumerian-Akkadian cosmogonic epic, Enuma Elish, Tiamat mixed its waters with Abza, thereby giving rise to the world. Tiamat was supposedly depicted as a dragon or hydra with 7 heads. In the text of Enuma Elish it is mentioned as a woman. The gods who were born entered into a struggle with her, and Marduk who killed her creates sky and earth from her body. According to the Jewish myth, before the creation all was water. The deep is personified as a terrible monster, which in the Babylonian version bears the name of Tiamat, corresponding to the Hebrew, Tehom, used as the technical expression for the primeval ocean. Tehom, the first of 7 infernal habitations, that correspond to the 10 Qliphoth, literally, peals of Jewish Kabbalistic tradition, often in place of Sheol. In Lovecraft, the primary forces are Chaos Azathoth, the keeper of the gates between the worlds, locked outside the universe Yog-Sothoth. Shub-Niggurat is the deity of fertility. In the philosophy of Sankhya it is Prakriti, the primordial nature, the material root cause of the universe, the female fundamental element that breeds for the sake of the reproduction process itself, and devours its own children. Information about the battle, which was designed to tame the elemental forces, normalize their manifestation in time and introduce an algorithm that restrains the elements, is in all myths. Not all gods have the right to enter the halls of Gaia, and magicians go there only with a guide born in this world, the world of pure elemental primordial potencies. For example, Lovecraft's This Explorer is Nyarlathotep. Therefore, magicians practicing elemental magic have always been persecuted by mass restrictive systems because their activities could violate the algorithm of containment of the elements, which can lead to catastrophic consequences. Therefore, the passage to the worlds of Gaia, the worlds of primary energies, is closed to anyone. Only the mother Rhea or her messenger can summon the power of the Titans of Gaia. The path from the world of the living to the world of the dead, as ancient myths describe it, consistently overcomes all 3 layers of the earth. Flesh. Biology must remain in the Demeter layer. It goes to other children of the earth to eat, where nothing is lost and everything has its place and its purpose. Memory, if it is an independent force, and not dissolved in the flesh, goes to the layer of the earth Rhea. There, unlike the first layer, it is not consumed or mixed, does not go into food or other building material. All information memory is stored on the material layer. It remains unchanged, waiting for that strong fire that is able to take this information and turn it into reality, give it a new life, stretch it out in time. Rhea's divine consort Kronos, the god of incarnate time, takes his children away, allowing them to exist within himself, stretching their minds along the timeline. In the myth, this process is described as the swallowing of his children by Kronos. Gaining a new experience in the process of living time, the information stored in Rhea's womb returns to her at the end of the time given by Kronos in a completely different quality, in a completely different force. The information that has reached the level of the Rhea, receiving the right of immutability, is associated with all other information stored in its bosom, is embedded in the information network. In the halls of the Earth Rhea, such binding gives development for the formation of information systems that seem to ripen, up to a certain time in the womb of the goddess, are nurtured by her until it is time to manifest no longer a separate quantum of information, but to allow the birth of the entire quantum network. The birth of systems of this level occurs infrequently and in various geographical spaces. This is exactly the kind of birth Lev Gamaliel called passionarity. It provides global informational changes in the space-time of the god Kronos. Changes that neither people, nor gods, nor egregors, nor religions, and no systems at all can counteract.